Bitcoin is sitting at major support. Liquidity just got swept, and we just took 3 stop losses in a row. This isn't a zone for comfort. This is a zone for positioning. And with that in mind, I have a new Bitcoin setup that's forming right now that could decide the next move. Today, I will show you why the weekly structure isn't as bearish as it actually looks, where the real liquidity sits, what happens if 60k gets taken, why a short setup may come first, and how institutions are quietly positioning. This isn't guessing, there's no emotional bias. It's just simple structure and execution. If you're serious about understanding this move before it happens, turn on those notifications, subscribe, and join the free Telegram with the link in the description, because when expansion starts, it will not wait. This is Bitcoin on Point, where I break down the market in real time and emotion free. And before diving into the technicals, we're going to study the important macro backdrop. Just in, $660 billion market-making giant Jane Street just disclosed buying $100 million more Bitcoin exposure via MicroStrategy. Now, Jane Street is one of the largest liquidity providers in the world, and they've just increased their Bitcoin exposure. So this isn't retail hype. Guys, this is serious capital. When market makers increase the exposure, they're not gambling by any means. They are strategically positioning. Meanwhile, big crypto accounts are calling this moment the beginning of the biggest bull market in history. And if you zoom out structurally where Bitcoin is right now, this setup does resemble earlier expansion phases from prior cycles. We get compression, liquidity, and breakout structures forming before the expansion. So yes, history doesn't have to repeat, right? But it often does rhyme. Now, here is the long-term narrative. Fidelity previously projected 1 Bitcoin could be worth $1 billion by 2038. Not 100K, not 500K, $1 billion. And again, with the numbers game, whether you believe that or not, the key takeaway is major institutions are modeling Bitcoin as a multi-decade macro asset, not a speculative toy. Now, with that being said, let's take all of the macro and throw it into the technicals. And we're going to start with the weekly time frame. And on the channel for the last few weeks, we've been discussing the weekly bullish order block. And this sits between $64,000 and $60,000. However, with continued bearish momentum, if we do see a liquidity sweep below, we do have a last level of support, which sits roughly at $54,000. So if the selling pressure is not easing, if we get continuation and we do see a sweep below the weekly bullish order block, there is still support below waiting. And again, scrolling over to the left, you can see that this was the lows from September of 2024, which then proceeded into a major rally which led Bitcoin to new all-time highs. So since holding this level of support and retracing to new all-time highs, Bitcoin has simply started retracing back down to those lows, and this in the past, around this area between 60 and 50k, is where bulls stepped in and defended the guardrails. So yes, we've been watching 64 to 60k, but if there is a deeper sweep of liquidity, then we're simply looking for our last support zone at 54k before the potential major reversal shift. Now, there is one pattern here, right, on the weekly time frame, and it's a potential bear flag. Going from the candle closes at 123k back down to the wick low in November, what we started to see then was some sort of rising wedge or rising channel. Now, Bitcoin did lose support roughly at 90k, and this is what's led us back down into this weekly bullish order block. Now, if we was to sort of copy this flagpole and drag it down to where we actually started rejecting from the resistance point of the rising wedge, the target we actually get brings us right down to the last support entry point, right? Or the last support zone, should I say, at 54K. So we do have the flagpole, we had the rising channel or the rising wedge, and we've got the breakdown. So if there's any loss of structure between the weekly order block at 64 and 60K, 54K becomes a real possibility for a market structure shift. Now, with that being said, we're going to take this into Bitcoin on the 2-day time frame. And this is important for context. I can't emphasize this enough. If we look at Bitcoin in 2021, we did have a similar sort of structure. We had a double top back then. We had this flagpole, a bearish flag pattern or formation in a rising wedge slash channel. And then we actually broke down. But Bitcoin didn't hold its support. It actually lost that and continued its trajectory lower. Right now, fast forward to Bitcoin in 2025. We have a very similar scenario. We have two peaks, right? Similar to a double top for Bitcoin in 2021. The last peak was at 126K. And then since then, we are replicating a very similar breakdown scenario. So if Bitcoin does come back and find support within 64 to 60K, fantastic. However, if we do get the sweep below, which is what we saw in the past for Bitcoin in 2021, then this is where we're looking at that liquidity grab at 54K, right? That last level of support. So if things get ugly and 60K is lost and we follow suit with how 2021 was for Bitcoin, then 54K is a major area for support. And again, it ties up with the weekly liquidity pocket below our weekly bullish order block. So I hope you're with me. 64 to 60K has a potential to market, but if we do get a liquidity sweep back down to 54K, it would be replicating a similar scenario to Bitcoin in 2021. And then again, most of the fear, in my honest opinion, would likely be priced in. And this is where we could see the shift in structure, right? This is where we could see that bullish reversal. So that's what we're looking at here on the macro. Now, taking this into the 4-hour time frame, we're getting a lot more intricate here. And what we've actually seen is a clean break and retest. So we was looking for a move back up to 72K, which is the major level of resistance. We was expecting Bitcoin to hold this ascending level of support that it created since early February, but we got the breakdown of that support. We do have the 4-hour order block as well that's actually seen a sweep below. And whilst we actually got the breakdown, what we see here, right, which is the breakout and the retest on resistance, we came to support, but we lost it, right? We found support in the OB, but since then we've been rejecting the previous resistance trend line. And Bitcoin has seen the breakdown from that previous level of support and met it as resistance. Now, again, we did see the sweep on the 4-hour between the last two weekly support zones. So we have swept below, right, the last two weekly lows. So what this actually means is that we potentially are looking for that run back down towards at least 60K and the lows that we've actually came from early February. Now, this is what's giving us the idea for the Bitcoin short, right? Which I will discuss a little later in the video, but nonetheless, we've had the breakdown of support, we've had the retest into resistance, and we've swept the order block from the last 2 weeks. This shows that there is continued selling pressure, right? And again, it lines up with the trade idea that we're talking about. Now, with that in mind, let's go over to our trades. And at the start of the video, I was saying, look, we've got 3 stop loss triggers in a row. Right? And guys, we have to be completely honest. The aim isn't to win every single trade. The aim is to make more money than we're actually losing, right? So it's going to entail wins. It's going to entail losses. And we're fully transparent here. We're being honest, right? Stop loss got hit on pump. It is what it is. However, what we did see for pump was a reaction, and again, a similar reaction to what we saw on Bitcoin. We lost the level of support, ran into it as resistance, and then rejected. This is what's happened for pump, right? We lost support, ran into it as resistance, and we've rejected, and that's why we've hit our SL. Same way with SPX, right? But this one was a little bit different. We did secure $130. We secured TP1 from our entry point. We did have a re-entry at break even, but now again, it's rolled over and we've hit our SL. It's very similar with ADA as well. We was expecting a daily fair value gap to hold as support, but we swept below and our stop loss got hit. Right? So it is what it is, right? We have honesty, transparency. We don't win everything, but nonetheless, we are here and we are trying to execute and make a difference. That's what counts. Now, looking at the Bitcoin 8-hour setup, this is why now we've got a short setup in mind, right? On the 4-hour time frame, we've had the breakdown, the retest, and the sweep of the last 2 weeks support in the order block. So what this is telling us is momentum is strong. And if we do see an entry here, if Bitcoin gets a rally up in towards 67K, this is where we're getting the entry, right? Our positioning entry point sits roughly at 68K, bang on the dot. We do have a stop loss above at 70K, and our take profit is back down at 59K and the wick lows of February. Right? And again, if you look at the structure for Bitcoin here, it kind of explains why we're looking at this setup. Yeah, we've just swept the lows from sort of Friday the 13th. We had this level of support roughly at 65K, but we've swept it, right? So there is selling pressure here. And this is what's giving us that guidance after the break and retest to look for the downside continuation towards these lows, right? So this is what's given us our setup for Bitcoin on the 8-hour. It's not executed yet, but if we do get that rally and continue placing lower highs, it could offer the perfect entry to actually short back down to the lows from early February, roughly at 59K. So that's what we're looking at, right? And again, look, heading over to Profits Precision, our dashboard, this is where we monitor everything live in real time. We still have 5 wins and 4 losses. Our win rate at the moment is 55%. But again, remember, regardless if we have 5 wins or 4 losses, our largest win so far has been $309 and our largest loss has been $110. So regardless, the account is still up $589, which is near 6% after a total of 9 trades. And that's with 5 wins and 4 losses. So it does make a massive difference, right? Now, again, you can track all of this information in one dashboard. You do get 30 days of free access for this information, and all of our trade setups are shared live inside the Telegram. Guys, head over there. You are missing out if you are not. We shared all the structured details, all the entries, all the stop losses, all the TPs, everything inside the Telegram. The links are in the description. So guys, a summary of today's video. Bitcoin may look scary, but we are still respecting the weekly bullish order block, and there is a last support zone below at 54K. On the 2-day time frame, we are seeing a similar setup to Bitcoin in 2021, which broke down before a major bull cycle, and we're in a similar situation now. 64 to 60K, sorry, is that support, but again, that 54K lows of September 2024 does wait for a potential market structure shift. The 4-hour is what's giving us the guidance for our 8-hour setup on Bitcoin, looking for that short. We've had the break and retest into resistance with continued momentum. And again, yes, we've hit 3 trades at stop losses, but nonetheless, we are still active, we are still positioned, and we are still 6% up in our $10,000 to $100,000 trading challenge. Guys, head over to Telegram. The links are all in the description. Do not miss out, and I will see you again in the next update.